Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley and we have an awesome battle for you in this one. It's going to be a Separatist Empire force ambushing the army of Middenland. So it requires a mod that unlocks all the factions in the main campaign. So a lot of them are just the base units with reskins, but still very cool. See my ambush here set up around the perimeter. I have basically a mix of forces, a couple cannons here and there. Spearmen and halberds are going to be holding the choke points, backed up by some cheap swordsmen. The theme of this fight is I have a bunch of kind of crap infantry and lots of them, whereas Indie Pride has more elite forces. So I'm going for a complete surround of his army as he moves up through this center area. You can see a couple swordsmen, a couple halberds, and then quickly it gets higher tier to great swords, Empire Knights, and 4 demis with a steam tank in the rear. And up through the front he has a warrior priest, a bright wizard, and another lord. I myself am on this flank going to have 2 mortars. I did have 2 Hellstorm rocket batteries on the other side. I have a mix of spearmen with my Empire Captain and my Empire General holding the rear. Some Empire Knights. There are some Knights that defected to the Separatist cause. I have a big block of skirmishers here because I wasn't able to deploy in time when we started off this ambush battle. So the countdown was going a bit too quickly for me to deploy everything, but I got most of my units in place. Great cannons, for example, here, looking at the rear of the armies where the demigriffs are set up. And so yeah, now we're going to get underway. So this mod is very cool. Like I said, it unlocks all the factions. The reskins look great. And it's just even if it's just a recoloring, it does give some differentiation for when you do have these scenarios where you have a civil war, with only 4 playable factions, maybe 5 counting chaos. You get a lot of repeats for the faction, so it's nice to have a little bit of at least color differentiation. And it'd be really cool if in multiplayer, if multiple players on the same team chose the same faction, that you would automatically be assigned a different skin for that faction for easier identification. Anyways, at the rear of the column here, the troops were looking at the Hellstorm rocket batteries that are firing away at the main heroes in the front. Immediately, some of the swordsmen are going to start breaking off. You can see the colors of Middenland on these guys as they make their approach. They're not quite sure where my troops are hidden, so they're going to actually be headed towards the artillery pieces. Not entirely sure where the rest of my troops are positioned at, so here they go, pushing forward on all flanks. Demis in the rear also going to be moving up. Meanwhile, I'm starting to deploy up my spearmen under the cover of the artillery barrages. There we go. And in the distance, the Bright Wizard is swooping forward. He's not going to he's not going to let this ambush get the best of him, and is actually making him very angry. So he shoots fireballs at the forces ambushing him. We're firing a bunch of Hellstorm rocket batteries towards him and the troops below him, getting some connections, some lucky shots. Although these are on some of the cheaper swordsman units. I'm going to block this gap with halberds, and so this ends up being a pretty cool map for this type of scenario. I'm charging forward with some pistoliers here, outrider forces, and my cannons are actually in the back here, getting a couple shots off at the enemy. They're somehow able to arc their shots over my own men and hit some of the demigriffs, so they're starting to take losses. My knights here charging forward to blunt the Empire forces. I'm charging on the left, but this main blob of crossbowmen is getting a bit too eager. It's getting pulled out of position. Like I said, these are the troops that I hadn't had time to deploy appropriately, and so they're going to get just charged by the remainder of the Empire forces. I wasn't sure which way the Demis and the Empire Knights were going to go, but it seemed that I guessed incorrectly, and so they're going to get a nice pickup. However, this does end up being somewhat of a trap in my favor. I had kept my gunners in the rear and outrider, so this is going to be a good opportunity for me to start picking away at some of his troops. And there one of the guys claiming it's a civil war, which indeed it is. Now we're going to get our gunfire, gun line straight into the Demis and the Empire Knights. So this is going to be a massacre of the Emperor's finest, the troops of Middenland. So we're going to start chewing away at their numbers. Even my crossbowmen here in point blank range are going to start firing into those knights. Meanwhile, here my knights have held back the enemy forces. I'm going to be charging in with some spearmen, and then my captain's going to be going around for a hammer and anvil around the flank, and also to tie down some other forces. So overall, the ambush has been pretty successful, but the Middenland forces have pretty aggressively charged out on all fronts and are taking the fight to me, not letting themselves get bottled up in the center, which is a good move for Indie Pride, who's actually commanding these forces. And so now he's got his infantry, he's got his captains, and this is going to wear out my front lines. On this flank also, he's got great swords fighting against me, and especially over here, my swordsmen against a whole mass of great swords, not going to be going well, especially with reinforcements. So while I may be potentially winning on this flank, the other flank is destined to be a loss. So I'll be charging my great cannons, but my pistoliers here going to be locked and loaded, firing and routing one of those units. The other one, however, is running straight through the forest, cleaning up my men. And so I'm kind of on damage control at this point. Front ranks have been lost. It is the crossbowmen who would be nice to keep alive, but like I said, the gunners in the rear are going to be getting a lot of the kills in here against the costly demis. Demis are going to try and charge into my men, but they're rearing up as they take more and more shots. Lots of HP damage being put on. Feathers. You can see a little bit of the animations when they get hit with the feathers popping into the air. I do have to say the graphics on this game are super impressive, especially the lighting on this map in particular came out looking really, really great. So very excited to play this one. Tons of fun. You don't see ambushes too often. And now you see the true differentiation of the color. Knight against knight, foot soldier against foot soldier, really epic stuff. And this is the kind of thing, I mean, this is basic medieval troops. This is the type of stuff that I hope to see in the future if we do make a return to medieval Total War. I'm going to swap out my knights, pulling them out to allow the spearmen to fight the enemy spearmen and enemy knights to my advantage. Mortars are going to continue to fire away at this blob. And then I do have my general actually in the mix. You can see him in the bottom left, engaged. The enemy is going to start to be routed and pulled away. So like I was telling you, on this flank we are getting the edge. But that's probably because the enemy's best troops, the great swords, are committed on the other front. In any case, I'm going to be pulling forward with my knights here now that they were disengaged from the fight and I don't necessarily need them. Demis have been beaten back, and I've reformed this position here to plug the gap. However, my enemy still has troops in the back. Indy's moving a lot of his guys, and the steam tank you saw there was positioning itself to keep my guys occupied. Meanwhile, my Empire Knights, or my Separatist Knights, I guess you could call them, are pulling back to this key area of the battlefield, this bottleneck that's right by my Hellblasters, or sorry, my Hellstorm rocket batteries. Really need to keep those alive, and so here comes a glorious charge into the rear. You can see the bright wizard in the distance shooting flaming missiles at me to try and keep my guys at bay. It whiffs, and I get a clean strike into the back of his entire line here. This is going to be swinging the balance bar back to my favor in this neck of the woods. On the bright wizard, he is super pissed. Since the beginning of this ambush, he's been pissed, throwing fireballs all over the place, and now he got back into close quarters combat to try and save some of these men. Yeah, the general for Indy Pride is in the mix here. I believe his word priest is as well, so it's hard for me to crack that. However, he has done the inverse. He has cracked my forces here. Great sword into the back of the halberdiers. So I'm having a hard time holding his guys back. This side has been completely flattened, and he's moving now through the backwoods, so that means my entire flank here needs to be cleaned up quickly. I need to beat back Indy Pride, and then maybe try and salvage, pull back to this position, which you can see I am now starting to do this flank, reconsolidating my forces. Indy's forces are mostly routing, so I'm reforming my spear line, pulling forward with my crossbows, forming another defensive line. And so now this is going to be the place for the Separatists to start rallying before we get off into another attack. And in the distance, it's super cool. They can see the remainder of the Middenland troops pulling back, so seemingly a victory on this side of the battlefield. And now my captain and my general rallying their men victoriously on this side of the battlefield after having slaughtered tons of Middenland troops. So this is really, really cool. My men moving forward. I got a lot of guns left, a lot of pikes left, so things are looking relatively good in my favor. But Indy Pride still has a couple tricks up his sleeve. He has some Demigriff Knights actually free, roaming in the back of my lines. I had not seen them. They had previously broken and have now reformed. And so they've come back and they found some of my crossbowmen that had also reformed. And Indy was quicker on the micro. Notice that his guys came back from routing before I did. And then he takes that a huge cluster. That's going to be a big loss for me. Meanwhile, I'm pulling forward with my mortars, try and get them in range of this cluster. I know that I'm losing this side desperately. You can see my men routing, and this, yeah, the Bright Wizard getting tons of magic spells off, so this spell is doomed for my side. So I figured, you know, if my troops are routing, then I'm gonna blow the entire area up. So that's why the mortars are moving up into position.
The gods have abandoned us!
But in the distance, look at that. You can see my general in the distance with his cape flowing atop the horse, and that is going to be the rallying point for my troops. Demis have found my men. I do have handgunners in the rear. They're going to reform themselves, and they're going to try and get some volleys off at these Demigryph Knights as they charge into my mortar crew. They do hit a couple of mine, but now with the volleys incoming a bit amongst the Demis, a couple of them go down, and they're going to rout before they can even kill a couple of my men. So the mortars are going to stay up and running just as I need them. And they're going to try and cover the retreat of all my units. This is a lot of guys that I need to keep alive. Pistolier is going to be moving up as well to try and take out the great swords. So I'm clipping the rear, but it's really not going to be enough. So yeah, all of Indy's guys in tow right behind my troops are going to start chasing them. Some of my guys are going to start to rally. But you have a healthy greatsword unit now moving in, so I definitely need some more troops on this side of the battlefield. More guys on that side, on the far kind of tail end of where the ambush was, are reforming. But the greatswords are now in and amongst my first crew. Outriders in the back shooting at his men. Going to be picking up some nice easy kills, but pretty soon here they're going to be actually warded off by the incoming Bright Wizard, threatening to charge into me and cast some spells. So I would say he's been a pretty important part of this battle. Up on the hill here, my guys continue to reform. I've charged in with my Empire Knights against the enemy general, and then some of my infantry are going to come back. These Demis came back from routing with 5 men, routed some of my guys in the rear, and then another unit came back from routing in the back. I should have seen these guys off for sure. They're going to be punishing, taking out huge swaths of now my gunners, crucial units that I definitely need for the next part of the engagement. My crossbowmen were shooting at these great swords. The great swords are not having any of it, so my crossbowmen push back, and my general here charges straight into them to try and force them back. I'm going to try and reposition over here. A lot of the Middenland troops are closing in, so I'm going to have to pull back my pistoliers. And in the distance, my routing forces have been seen off pretty much. And it looks like with these charges against the depleted greatswords, I'm going to be doing pretty well. And a lot of forces, 5 depleted units going to be rallying on this side. So things look like they may be swinging back in my favor. We'll see, although the balance bar does tell another story. I do have a nice stronghold here. Demi's finally routed. My gunner is still holding strong. And so now we're going to kind of re-engage in another epic struggle here. Now at the front lines where my halberds and pikes are going to try and hold out against a second rush of these greatswords. These great swords are going to be pretty good against my guys, but I do have gunners going to start reforming, and they're going to be able to fire somewhat over my men. You can see over on the left some of the great swords going flying, so I am doing some damage. My pistolier is going to try and move up, try and shoot over my own troops, so at least I do have a little bit of time to delay this action. But you can see some shots being put on my pistoliers. That is going to be from the steam tank over in the distance. That is going to be a devastating piece of equipment that's gonna, you know, crack this nut, this defensive position that I have set up here. That is gonna be very, very bad for me. Indy Pride's general actually gets in the mix too, so he's really eager to break my fortified position here. And then he's gonna charge headlong into my gunners. There's another greatsword unit moving through the back. I do have my own captains and other units now running around rallying, popping abilities. I don't know if it's going to turn out well. These great swords are going to be met by 3 units of swordsmen, and even that I don't think is enough to take them out. A couple of my men sent flying by the steam tank. And now you see the face-off between my Separatist captain, or my Separatist general, and this Middenland captain on the left. This is the climax of the engagement, with the steam tank just, shredding my guys from a distance. We're starting to have a complete collapse. On the left, great swords pouring through my men. I do have a couple guys who came back, swordsmen, going to be trying to tie down these Empire Knights. So I am somewhat rallying in a couple places, but for the most part I'm cracking. I had sent a couple troops that were otherwise routing over to try and suppress, or at least distract, the steam tank. So they're going at it, but they're going to be vaporized by the steam gun here. Just probably melting the skin off those men. A couple more volleys shooting into them, and the steam tank doesn't even get a scratch on it. My gunners do have point blank range straight into this greatsword, so this could start to turn the time. You can see the greatsword's actually starting to rout, so this could be a crucial pickup. But then once again, the demigriffs being in the perfect position at the right time, gonna halt me from firing, and then the greatswords are gonna recommit against my guys. So really should have made sure I saw those demigriffs off. You've seen how much damage they've done to me in the late game, and yeah, that proved to be the undoing of my position here. I mean, they took out early crossbows, they've taken out gun lines, they've taken out my mortars. Had I had all those guns, mortars, and artillery pieces, I definitely could have done more damage to the remaining Empire troops as they tried to form up against me, but all for naught. Some more swordsmen are rallying, so the fight is not quite done with. There's still wind in the sails, especially my heroes here are going to try and hold out against these great swords, but it's taking a pretty damaging amount of, pretty big beating here. I'm trying to pull them out of the action to try and land another strike against these routing units. Want to make sure that they break. Then he's going to try and pull back to my returning units on the far right. Meanwhile, my general holds this entire greatsword unit at bay. But we'll see what happens. So 3 units still remaining for me. Spearman unit that's still shaken. And some men being seen off by the Bright Wizard. Again, he is just doing so much damage to me. It looks like a couple men rallying in the back. So this is, like I said, it's still not over. Pulling in my halberds over on this front, and they're eagerly moving forward to see off the last of the Middenland troops. And all of a sudden they do an about face, seeing that, oh god, those are great swords. So now they've turned around, and I am going to give them a movement order. I was a little sloppy as I was telling other units to run away, and it appears the greatswords are a little quicker than me, especially on the charge, so they are going to catch up. I was hoping to get out of there before he could get up to me, pull them out of position, but it was not to be the case. And that's going to end up completely collapsing that front. Now, I did get in here with my heroes and my swordsmen, and the greatswords are flashing in terms of the morale, but kind of at the knife's edge of the morale, it broke against me. And so here, this is where the valiant defeat of the Separatist happened. The ambush was inevitably a failure here, and it looks like this piece of history will not be recorded. The rebellion will be snuffed out, and I'm sure Middenland will suppress it in the history books. But anyways, I had way more troops than Indy Pride, quantity rather than quality, and Indy did a great job reacting me, although admittedly a fair amount of my troops were caught out due to the early start of the game, and I just didn't protect them adequately. So great job of Indy for exploiting that, for using his demis in the right place at the right time. And yeah, it was a very fun scenario. I hope to do more of these, and I definitely recommend that you guys do check out this mod that lets you play as all the factions. See you in the next one.